This is the landscape drawing that you're going to be doing with oil pastels. All right. So some of you have probably used oil pastels, some of you have not. Today we're going to use them probably in a little more of a unique way, a different way than what you're used to. We are going to be taking concepts from your sketches that you made in your PJ, and we're going to put them directly onto the page, onto the final drawing. Now, you don't need to use every element that you put into your sketches on your final. If you want to change it up, if it's completely different, that is up to you. All right? Don't worry if you don't think you're extremely like a good artist, an amazing drawing, creative person. That's why we're doing this in school. We're learning. Remember that talent is a pursued interest. Anything you're willing to practice, you can do. So, the learning intention of this piece, what we're asking you to learn about is drawing an imaginary landscape using your oil pastels. You will focus on blending techniques, composition, and balance while using an impressionistic artistic style. At the end, you're going to evaluate and critique your success in your PJ. Your success criteria for this is going to be you must have first complete all of the 3 planning sketches. You must create, when you're making this piece, you're going to have to create a sense of movement with your marks, with line and color. You have to see the movement, much like we did in the Van Gogh piece. Your composition, your placement of objects on your paper must be completely filled in. There should be no white paper visible. Solid oil pastel when this is finished. For each component, for each section that's all drawn in like a coloring book, those should have multiple layers of color in them. You should have a clear foreground, midground, and background. No man-made objects, no houses, cars, people, boats, etc. No animals. We're doing landscape. We will be looking at your self-motivation and your independence with your time management by getting this done on time. If you have questions or concerns or confusion or problems, or you just want to show me what's going on, you need to make sure that A, you can email this to me. You can send it a picture on it via Remind. Remember, your Remind code is on the Google Classroom on the homepage right there. All right. I want to see your commitment to staying on top of your work, and I want to see your commitment on showing good, clean craftsmanship. Your presentation is going to be key to one of your scores that I give you. Let's get at it. Here we have the paper I'll be using to draw my landscape. I'll be using a pen, but I'm only using a pen for you to be able to see the work on paper. You probably will want to use a pencil. But once again, I'm only using this so it shows up better on the camera. We have our oil pastels in front of us. These were given to you in the packet that you came and received at the beginning of the school year. The oil pastels, they can be very brittle and they can break in your hands. You could have a piece of paper toweling off to the side to help clean your hands at times. Also know that at times you may end up with a whole bunch of colors from different oil pastels getting all over this. You can simply have a paper towel or something or a piece of scratch paper that you can clean it off onto the side. I've laid down scratch paper here that I can use to clean off my oil pastel as I work. If your oil pastel is like mine, where the crayon part is right up to the paper, I simply peel off just a little bit of the paper at a time. I do not want to peel off too much paper because the paper helps give a little more structure to the crayon, and then I'm also not sitting here using the crayon itself and touching all the oil and getting oil pastels all over my pants, my bedroom, or over your guardian's furniture. All right. Right now, I am going to look at one of the sketches I made. Now, I may take some of these elements and put them into my final drawing. I could change it if I wish. That's going to be up to me as I create my drawing. I'm going to take in consideration some of the small components because I want to be able to get my fat oil pastel into the small areas. So I need to think about the stuff that goes off into the distance, especially. Can I fill it in with my oil pastel? Did I draw it too small or too big? Let's take a look at how to do this. So my first thing that I'm going to do is I could draw from the foreground to the background, giving myself the option of not having to draw through things because I can create a solid idea in front. But it all depends upon you and how you want to draw. I'm going to start off with that tree that I created in my sketch, and I'm going to use that in this drawing that I decide to work on here. I'm going to make it probably a little bit different. I liked the idea of it kind of flowing off to the left-hand side, but this time I may sit here and, give it a little bit more of a, maybe like a Japanese maple type of tree, a little more bonsai-esque, would you say? Come on down with it. Don't worry about making mistakes. You can always cover them up later with your oil pastel. They're just happy little accidents. All right. I'm going to put a part of a branch in here. Being careful not to get too small so I can't get an oil pastel in. This time I'm going to maybe bring out a branch, making sure I have that nice jagged edge on the side, giving it that leaf pattern. You can have as much of this as you want. This is your drawing, your space. I'm going to put a nice little root here. I like how that happens. This little guy right here is going to come on out. There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to finish making the top of this, connecting it all. And I'm not worried once again about extreme detail for this piece, due to the fact that I'm giving the impression. I'm giving the idea. I'm not going into every little leaf. I'm not going into every little shape. I'm going to make it look like it's on a hill. I'll continue this coming down. That tree is a pretty friendly looking tree. That tree can be my friend. It can be your friend too. It's not wrong to have a tree as a friend. Right here, if you noticed, I gave myself a little bit of separation of land. It looks kind of odd right now, but I'm going to sit there and say, hey, maybe that land comes through the back here, and it picks up again right over here, And look at that. I created my background. In front here, I can tell that this is turning into a little bit of a, almost like a hillside. And maybe back here, change it up a little bit. I'm noticing it's heavy on my right. This is becoming an asymmetrical drawing. But I want to balance it out. I want to have an object off to my left. So I'm going to add some of these mountain ranges in. I'm going to ground my root system of the tree to the earth. And now from here, I have to make decisions. Am I going to use the path that I used before? Am I going to have more trees like this? What am I going to do? So I'm going to come in here and I think the size of that tree to the size of a human, how big do I want that to be? The path is going to, how big I make that path, if I make it next to this tree, is going to determine, is it going to be an enormous tree, or is it going to be something that if I put a person on a pathway, it would look relatively correct. So I think if I do something like this, that looks relatively decent to me. A person standing on there would probably come right about to there. That's a decent size, all right? That path, I am going to say, is going to come down in the background back here. In the foreground here, the path could come, but maybe I don't show it over on this spot. I just continue it right off to the side. I'm going to put some vegetation over here because I have this nice empty space. So I'm going to think about what I can put over here. Maybe I'm going to change it up just a little bit. Once again, I'm making these trees, and I always like to use the term like Dr. Seuss. These kind of like, these almost cartoony, but since it's got a little bit of an Asian flair with the Japanese looking like maple, I'm going to continue to work with those ideas. I could put some grass in the piece, and I could, maybe down below here, letting people know that what I have going on here is a small plant by making something that looks relatively, I guess you could say, what's the word I'm looking for? Familiar. All right? Excuse me for that. All right. Just giving myself some ideas. Over here, I could put the sun low, I could put a sun high. It all depends upon what I want to do, but I'm going to leave that alone for right now because I'm not exactly sure where I want to put that quite yet. I think in the background I may put some conifers, all right? Give the idea of some evergreens in the back. I'm being careful because these small areas, they're going to be difficult for me to get my oil pastel into. I'm going to put maybe a few down here on the path. Giving myself outlines of where to put everything. All right. I think that's enough for now. I still have lots to do. I still can always add more. All right. There's something really special about being able to express yourself in these drawings and to have fun with your experience. Think about the things you've seen. Think about the colors. And also understand that it's your drawing and it's an impressionistic piece, so the colors don't necessarily have to always be exact. Impressionism is all about capturing a moment of time and light. So sometimes, if we look outside the same window over the course of many, many months, the weather will change. And when that happens, the colors change. If it's going to rain out, there's a different look in the atmosphere. If we look outside and it's a bright sunny day, the atmosphere changes. The way things look. Is there dust in the air? Is there snow in the air? Is it a crisp morning? Is it a hazy, dusty morning? These are the kind of things that I take in consideration when I make this piece. And my colors don't have to be always correct. If I want to use some color that's not always seen on a tree, you're welcome to use any color you want. All right? I'm going to start off by working on my tree. And I'm going to bring in the camera just a little bit so you can see how I start to apply my marks. I've already got some movement in this piece. Where my eye flows, it's traveling around the paper. All right? I'm going to make my marks for this piece individual marks. I am not going to color it in solid. I'm going to come down to this and I'm going to start playing around with that movement. I'm going to be very aware of how I apply my mark. These marks are also going to train my eye. It's going to direct my eye where I need to go. So as I do this, I'm adding a layer of these orange marks just in the tree alone. This is a very calming, soothing process. Take your time. Put a headset on. Listen to some music. Think about the good things happening. Think about your day. Enjoy it. Get into it. If you can, try to remove yourself from any kind of distractions and bring yourself into a situation that allows you to be alone. Alone with your little space, alone with your drawing. You might be telling yourself, hey Chad, that's kind of weird right now. It looks kind of strange. Maybe you're right. But I've just got my base coat down. I'm going to add a little bit of green to this piece. Now I want to go in between the orange. It's okay if I go on top of it at times. It's okay if it blends a little bit together. That's completely okay. But now I'm going to start getting more of that impressionistic style. I can make a little bit of longer lines, but I'm not just sitting here randomly putting down dots. I'm really thinking about the placement of where I put all of my mark. Marking is a huge component to the thought process, to the look of the piece, to your composition. I'm being aware to be careful. I'm trying not to make a mess out of my drawing. Once again, when you see my drawing, you see that you can see my outline and pen. That's for you as a student to be able to see what I'm doing. But yours will be in pencil. You probably won't even see your pencil line when you're all done. Maybe I come back in with another color. This time I'm going to come back in with a little bit of pink. I want to see how that turns out. That's not bad with the pink on there. Probably not my favorite. But since I started with it, I'm going to continue. I may add a little more black to some parts, just to give it a little bit of a definition. Don't want to add too much black. It'll muddy it up really quick. So I'm going to add, like, think of it, it's kind of like a shadow defining areas. Starting to give a little bit of definition to the piece. This is not a race. I'm going to come back in with some of my colors that I was working with before. Maybe a little more orange. Now, if you wanted to make yourself a landscape in space, you could do that if you want. Just remember, it's land. I don't want to see Martians in there, but I don't mind a space one. Sometimes kids want to do an underwater scene. That's fine, but I don't want to see just water with things swimming in it. First of all, we don't want to see anything swimming in it. It would have to be the land, as if a submarine was looking at the bottom of the ocean. That's what you're going to have to take in consideration when you're making these pieces. Notice I'm starting to make some areas a little thicker, a little thinner with my line. And I'm going to continue to play with that as I put together my piece. How am I going to work through this? I'm letting the piece of artwork take on a life of its own. I'm starting to let the piece tell me what needs to happen. And that's okay. We have a plan, but it's just a plan. It's an idea. We can deviate from that plan. We can deviate from those ideas. We just have to be concerned about our time management and getting everything done. There we go. Kind of liking that. Now, there's nothing wrong with practicing on a piece of scratch paper. If you want to practice, go right ahead. I encourage it. Understand, though, that we only have so much material. We don't want to use up all of our oil pastels on our practice. Notice how I'm using this to make my marks and how I'm using this to color in. I'm even going back on top of it with my oil pastel and giving it a blending quality to the piece. I can use the oil pastel to blend. Don't use your fingers. Don't use your fingers. Don't use a separate piece of paper. Use the material. Blend the oil pastel. The mark is extremely important. I really like how that yellow comes out of there. Or not that yellow, that orange. Maybe I should give some yellow to the piece. I don't know. Notice how much the direction at which I put down the oil pastel. It keeps giving more and more movement and more direction to the pieces as I use them. Keep your work area clean as best you can. I know that can be hard sometimes using oil pastel, but that's okay. Just do the best you can. Get a little bit messy, make sure you apologize to your guardians. They're not going to like it too much, having a really messy, oily house. If this stuff gets on your clothes, it may not come out because it's oil, right? I'm only using the black to define the area. I'm not going crazy with that black. The black can turn really muddy really quick, and we want to be aware of how different colors affect that composition. What am I doing to it? What's going on with it? How's that green going to change the look of my piece? I have a little more of the orange. I think it looks like almost like fire down below. Reminds me of fall. Fall's one of my favorite times. All the dead leaves falling to the ground. I think that gives you the idea of what you need to do. For this tree branch, I'm going to add some traditional colors, like a brown to it. Just a little bit of brown. I'm going to come back in, give myself some whites. My white pastel. You can add any color you want to yours. But notice how the coloration changes and the marks tend to change as I layer the white on top of that brown. Going into my other drawing, it's okay when I go on top of the leaves a little bit with this. See how it changes in there? Don't be discouraged. I mean, in the beginning, you start making this and people think it's not immediately good. It's going to change. It's going to work. Pull this together. And I keep going around the piece itself as it evolves. This will take you quite a while to get through this entire drawing. Now I'm going to just do a little bit of orange down below here, just like before. Give myself an idea where these branches come in. Being aware of my movement on this piece. Got a nice look coming up through there. And I want to finish it off with that. I will continue to do this type of marking on all of my areas. I will change up the coloration where I have a path, where I have a plant, where I have land. You can have water in here. But I want you to think about something else right now. I want to think about the sky. I want to think about this area. So what am I going to do to it? I'm going to have some blue in the sky, and I got to think about Van Gogh's Starry Night. How did Van Gogh treat his sky? He had lots of movement. So I'm going to try doing some movement myself. And I am going to sit here and go, which way is the movement happening? The movement is happening in a circular movement. So my sky, I'm going to make marks in the sky, much like Van Gogh did for Starry Night. I notice I'm starting to give myself some shape, making small marks, and giving myself a pattern, giving myself direction. Now for me, I feel I'm pretty happy with the way that that movement is happening, and I can see throughout my entire piece how the eye will travel around it. And I'm going to treat the sky the same way that I was treating the marks within that tree. So if I sit here and I'm going to give a little bit of blue to the piece, and just like I used the dark black here, I'm going to use the dark blue. I'm going to start off with that first though. Make my edges a little bit darker. Just putting a little bit. I can always add more. I can always add more. I want to still see a separation between this air movement and this air movement. So I'm going to make it a little darker right here so it doesn't get in the way, so there's a contrast between the two. And I'm going to begin to come in with my white. Notice how I'm blending it. Notice how it's becoming different. I'm using the white as a blending tool. And there's still some blue on my white crayon, which is giving it a nice coloration in the background there. It's giving it a nice tint. Tint is white added to any color. When I added black to here, I was adding a shade. I was starting to shade the work with the black. Now, you don't have to use blue and white on your sky, but I'm using it on mine. And I will continue to do this coloration in all these different spots. For now, I'm going to end this demonstration, and we're going to see some of the students' work where they've completed the entire drawing.